Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Halloween! Yeah, it is Monday, October 31st. Happy Halloween to everybody. Don't have my Halloween costume. Used to have a lot of those in the past, but no more kids around, so that's it. All right, let's talk a little bit about what's going on. Going to be a big week. We got the Fed meeting on Wednesday, and all the monetarist zombies. It's going to be a big zombie week. Big zombie week, not just for today, but the whole entire week with the Fed 75 basis point rate hike, pretty much baked into market expectations. But the zombies are going to be, they're going to be looking for some sign from the Fed that there's going to be a pivot. That's like they've been walking through the desert for hundreds of miles and they're dying of thirst and they want that glass of water, and that's the word pivot or something that alludes to that, which says that the Fed is going to slow down their rate hikes. So we may get that, we may not, but regardless, we have enough fiscal right now where the outlook, at least for most of the rest of this month, no, I'm talking about November, should be positive. And by the way, tomorrow is the first of the month, which means that's a big payments day. That's where your, Medicare, Medicaid, military pay, veterans benefits, disabilities. That's usually the first of the month is like a 90 billion positive flow. So even though we saw a little bit of a breather, a little bit of a pause in the market rally today, we should pick up again tomorrow and even into Wednesday with that Fed meeting. But yeah, the monetarists will be, they'll be hanging on every word that comes out in that statement, looking for some sign that the Fed is going to slow down. And, as I've always said and told you guys, I don't pay any attention to the Fed meetings. I think they're completely irrelevant. People don't have any real understanding of what rate adjustments are. And we're actually benefiting from rate adjustments right now. If you look at the interest income transfers into the economy, something that I've been talking about for a long time. I mean, that is just, the trajectory on that is very positive, and that's just in its early stages, folks. It's going to get a lot bigger, and it's going to stay high for a long period of time. And that's basically the same thing. I mean, fiscally, that's the same thing as sending out checks to people. It's not, in my opinion, it's not going to the right people. It's going to, those are checks going to people that already have money. I mean, if you're going to send out checks, I think it's a better idea to send them out to people who need them. But it all goes into the economy. When as I've always used the swimming pool analogy, that fills up the swimming pool. And, at the end of the day, that's a positive development. But nobody's really talking about this. Everything, of course, is always, the focus is 100%, what the central bank is what the Fed's going to do. And speaking of the Fed, I was listening to a video where it was an interview of Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger, many of you may know, is the partner of Warren Buffett. The two of them, Buffett has amassed like one of the, he's one of the richest guys in the world, basically made his fortune as a stock market investor. Not, he never created any industry, he never invented anything, just investing in stocks over the course of his entire life. I mean, he's an old guy now, he's in his 90s, but an incredible track record. Nobody has, at least in the financial realm, nobody has come anywhere near Warren Buffett. Nobody. I mean, you could take the biggest hedge fund guy, I don't know who that is, Jim Simons, I don't know, Renaissance Technologies, not even close to Warren Buffett. But Charlie Munger had some interesting comments, and I say interesting in a kind of, mocking way, because it was just so infused with this, monetarist lack of understanding. I mean, again, about the Fed, and printing money and how we need higher interest rates to squash inflation. So there's a complete lack of understanding, which I think speaks to their Munger and Buffett's genius as stock pickers. There's no question about it. But in terms of their macro understanding, and I think this applies broadly across the whole spectrum of the financial industry, there's a huge lack of understanding about how the monetary system works. And really, when you think about it, the success of guys like Buffett and Munger has to do with just secular growth in the economy. When the economy grows, and that's been the case over decades and decades, that just means greater corporate profits, more innovation, higher stock prices and financial asset prices. So, they've been carried along as good as they are, and I would take nothing away from them in terms of their stock picking prowess, okay? I think that's fair to say, and they should be applauded for that. But as good as your stock picking is, if there's not the macro environment, then, you're not going to see the kind of results that they have seen over, the decades that they have been investing. You need that macro environment, and that is an environment of economic growth, of innovation, and that comes from, really a deep understanding of how the monetary system works and what role government spending plays in that as a major component of GDP. The other thing that is, and this is universal, when you hear people talk about the printing money, they're printing money, the Fed, the central bank. Again, we get into this false view, or we're given this false view of central bank monetary operations being the equivalent of money printing. Now, I will say this, that fiscal is money printing. That's the creation of new dollars. Whereas central bank monetary operations are asset swaps. And the analogy I've always used, like if somebody, comes to me and says the Fed's printing money, I would say, look, if you have $10 million in treasuries and I have $10 million in cash, are you poorer than me? If you have $1 million in treasuries and I have $1 million in cash, are you poorer than me? If you have $1,000 in treasuries and I have $1,000 in cash, are you poorer than me? And the answer to all those questions, regardless of what the number is, it doesn't matter. The answer is no, you're not poorer than me. As a matter of fact, you're probably richer than me, because if you have those government securities, if you have treasuries, you're earning interest on that, whereas my cash, I'm not earning any interest on it. And that's very simply what monetary operations entail. It's just a switch from one type of a dollar to another. Government securities are dollar equivalents. And I've just made that case that they're dollar equivalents, and I don't think anyone can refute that. Because again, if you have 10 million in treasuries and I have 10 million in cash, are you poorer than me? And nobody is going to answer that question saying yes. As a matter of fact, most of you will answer that question and say, no, you're richer than me, and you would be right to answer in that fashion. So right there, it destroys the premise of money printing. Money printing would be this. You get a Social Security check from the government. Me, I don't get anything. Are you richer than me? Yeah, all else equal, you are. You just got a net increase. You got an increase in your net worth, all else equal, whereas I got nothing. That is something. That is an addition to, a net addition to your financial balances. The whole central bank thing, that's just made up in people's heads. That's just made up in people's heads. There's no way. The central banks have no power to add net financial assets. You hear what I'm saying? They have no power to add net. It's a bank. They lend against collateral. So if they're going to put some money into the system, at the same time, simultaneously, they're taking something away. You have one side of the ledger that has a positive. Simultaneously, on the other side of the ledger, there's a negative. It balances out. The government can add a positive. Okay? What is the government's liability? Is that, when the government gives you a check, it honors that check. That's its liability, and that's a liability that it can always fulfill. All right? On a dollar bill, it says, this note is for all, it's legal tender for all debts, public and private. The only thing that really matters on that statement on a dollar bill is the public part. It's legal tender for public debts, which means that's the promise. And what is a liability? It's a promise. That's the promise the government makes to you that it will accept its money basically for the payment of taxes, but it will accept its money. And that's a liability it can always fulfill. So you have to get it out of your head with the central bank stuff, because it's just made up. It's phony. It has no validity whatsoever. It's fake. It's just like, it's concocted in people's heads, and it's unfortunately been reinforced in their heads over decades and decades and decades, to the point where unfortunately we have ceded a large part of our economic management over to, this monetarism and central banks, where it's almost completely and utterly ineffective. And as a matter of fact, not even ineffective, but it runs counter to what they believe it does. And, I've given the example here many times. Rate increases are a good example, where they think they are squashing inflation. How do you squash inflation? When you're increasing the net income transfers into the economy, and when you're essentially raising prices through the rate increases, because the cost of credit is reflected in the cost of all goods and services. Everybody knows that. Why are they saying housing is so expensive? Because interest rates, mortgage rates are 7% right now. Because they put it at 7%. They raise the rate. It makes the cost of purchasing a home more expensive. And that flows through everything in the economy, because, industrial production, goods, the production of goods, services, credit, it all gets priced at a higher level. And again, we've seen so many examples of this throughout the world. I mean, it's right in front of their noses. It's right in front of their noses. Has 75% interest rates in Argentina squashed inflation? No, they got 100% inflation now. Has 14% interest rates in Turkey squashed inflation? No, but Turkey's kind of getting a little bit, they're catching on to the game. They've been starting to lower interest rates, and inflation has calmed down. How about Japan is the opposite example. Okay, the Bank of Japan is the only central bank in the world right now which is not tagging along with this other, the Fed's folly and the folly of other central banks raising rates. They still have negative rates, and the Japanese inflation rate is like 2%. And they've been dying to get 2% for years and years and years, and the only reason it's 2% is because Japan is a 100% net importer of its energy. It has to import all its oil. And oil prices have gone up. And still the inflation rate is only 2%. Why? Because they held their rates at, it's negative rates in Japan. Negative rates. Of all central banks, I never would have thought that Japan would be the one that would not toe the line. I mean, they're so obedient. That's just an obedient, those people, the Japanese are very, very obedient, and they go along with authority, and every other central bank follows the Fed. Japan didn't do that, which I think is a wonder. I mean, it's just like when I look at that, it's, it cracks me up. So yeah, this week, the monetarist zombies are going to be out. But the Charlie Munger thing, like he repeated, he went through all the, just all these kind of tropes about monetary policy. And actually, if you go, I don't know what you follow on YouTube, but I follow a lot of these financial channels and stuff, but everything is negative. Everything is negative. The next depression is coming. Another guy I saw, not to make this too long, but this guy, Sam Zell, very, very successful real estate investor. Older guy, I don't know, maybe he's like pushing his 70s, maybe 80s, I don't know. Very, very successful. They used to call him the vulture investor because he would swoop in and buy up properties when they were really, really cheap and discounted. He had a knack for that. And he's talking about the debt. Did you see the debt? It's in the trillions. Now, I don't know how long people have been crying the sky is falling about the debt. It's been, I've been in this business for over 40 years. I mean, it's been at least that long. And I know, I see almost every weekend when I go walking around here in New York City, we got the debt clock, so it's almost impossible not to see. But here's another guy. He made a lot of money, and I'm not taking anything away from this guy. He's an incredibly successful real estate investor. But that's what he knows. He knows real estate. He doesn't know anything about the financial system. There is no debt. Everything was paid for. Those are dollars. Basically, those are dollars that have never been taxed back by the government. That's all the spending minus the taxation. That's the outstanding amount of dollars that exist being held by, the non-government of the whole entire world, the non-U.S. government. And they're held in the form of U.S. treasuries, which are basically like a savings account at your bank. If you go in your bank and you switch your money from your checking account to your savings account, you still have that money. If you want it back in your checking account, you tell the bank to switch it back in your checking account, and they do that. It's the same thing with the so-called debt. I mean, it's just held in the form of government securities. You could redeem the securities and get a cash balance. It's like exactly the same as your bank switching it from the savings account to the checking account. But Sam Zell, he was like, we're going for a disaster. I tell you what a disaster would be, and I've said this before, you take back that 25, 26 trillion that is being held by us collectively throughout the world. Take it away, and I said this in my last video, you would have the greatest, deepest, longest economic depression in the history of mankind. That's essentially what this guy is arguing for. Like his billions that he made in real estate, Mr. Vulture, well, the vultures, the real vultures would be coming in picking off of his dead body financially if that were to happen. That's what these people are arguing for. And that's the danger when it comes to a lack of understanding, that you say things and these people are powerful because they have money, and in our society, money equates to power and influence. And they say these things, but they don't know what they're talking about. But they're very dangerous. And these are tropes that are repeated over and over again. And people who really don't know, and I'm not blaming them, like common people who are just trying to figure things out, but they hear stuff like that and they get influenced by that. And there's a real danger in that. I don't think it's going to end. I don't think it's ever going to end. It seems very convenient to hold these views. Very convenient to hold these views. First of all, everybody holds them. You know how hard it is to go against the crowd? Tell me about it, folks. Tell me about it. I've been doing this my whole life, okay? You see this thing. I got 500 people viewing my videos? That's nothing. Okay? I could say all this stupid shit like everybody else. I have 50,000 views on every one of these things. It's very hard to go against the crowd. People don't want to do that. They're uncomfortable at that. They don't have confidence in that. If they're wrong, they could say, well, look, he was wrong, Joe was wrong, Tom was wrong, Bill was wrong, Ann was wrong. They were all wrong. How can you blame me? That's the danger. Groupthink. and you have powerful people who have influence who are completely, misunderstanding the whole thing and ignorant of the whole thing, and not even, desirous of wanting to know. It's convenient. It fits the story. Everybody's saying it. Let me go with it. I don't want to rock the boat, right? As soon as you rock the boat, what happens? You get canceled or you get, derided. They don't want that. They got businesses, they got their status, they got their reputations at stake. No, it's better to just go along with everything. It's hard to step out from the crowd, folks. Believe me, it's hard. Anyway, that's my Halloween rant for today, folks. All right, that's it. We'll see. It's the zombie week. It's going to be the zombie week. It's going to be a lot of fun. Don't panic. Don't freak out. The world's not coming to an end, at least not yet. Never know about that one. We got that other problem going on too, and that's real. Like if you want to worry about something, worry about that. All right, everyone, take care. Bye.